UFC 302 is finally here, and Dustin Poirier is getting his fourth chance at an undisputed UFC title. My name is Angelo. This is We Want Picks, and I'm going to break down the entire UFC 302 fight card, giving you my picks, predictions, and DraftKings plays. But before I do, let's take a look at the wild success that our premium members have been having playing DraftKings Fantasy. Our premium members in the last 6 months have put up over $500,000 in winning tickets. Everything from $1,000 to $75,000, building lineups and competing with others. And they're able to do this because of the tools that we offer. One of those tools is the best DraftKings ownership projections in the game. If you play DraftKings Fantasy and you chase those giant payouts, you know how wildly important the ownership projections can be to separate yourself from the pack and build an optimal lineup. Well, you can unlock the ownership projections, quite literally the best in the game. Better than Awesemo, Roto Grinders, and all these other massive companies charging upwards of $100 a month. We're $10 a month. And all you need to do is go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top, and you'll unlock every single thing that we do. Picks, bets, optimizers, ownership projections, all the tools, all the insight you could ever want or need heading into a fight week. And guess what? It is June 1st. UFC 303 is June 29th. Not only will you get UFC 302's DraftKings information, you'll get the next event, the event after that, the event after that, and UFC 303. These ownership projections, the best projections in the game, will be preloaded into the DraftKings Optimizer. A couple clicks of a button and it'll spit out a lineup. It'll spit out 150 lineups. Everything I just mentioned, a million other things that I have not mentioned, are available right now, this instant, at WeWantPicks.com. Click Become a Member at the top. It's only freaking $10 an entire month. Not $10 an event, not $10 a week, $10 for an entire month's worth of content and insight. Let's go ahead and break down this card. The weigh-ins are over. Only one person missed weight. Somebody else needed a second attempt at the scale. And if you do want a full weigh-in recap, just go to our channel, check out the videos. We have Minty Bets. Yes, the Minty Bets from the UFC broadcast doing a weigh-in recap video. She talks about every fight, who looked good, who didn't look good, who made weight, who didn't make weight, what the scale said, and all of those details. So make sure you check out that video. Let's go ahead and break down this card. We only have 12 fights, which means we do have 24 fighters to pick from, but we need to be careful and we need to pick our spots wisely. Opening up the card was the weight misser. Andre Lima missed weight by 4 pounds. As of now, that fight is still on. We'll see what happens. We'll see if something changes. But Mitch Raposo's team basically said, we took the fight on 10 days notice and we made weight. There's no excuse for Andre Lima. They're 100% correct. Andre Lima was on this card. And yes, he had been shuffled through a few opponents, but he had a date. He had an arena. He was on this card. There's no excuse for him to miss weight. But he did. He is $8,600, and he is a considerable favorite. And I think that's because of the short notice. Because skill-wise, while Andre Lima is pretty good, he's a solid striker. He'll invest in the body early, work to the head later. He's got good technique. He's not lazy with anything he does. And I understand he's got some credentials in grappling and things like that, but he is primarily a striker. He's got a couple of striking titles, whether I forget if it's Muay Thai or kickboxing, but he's got a couple of titles. He's competed in those sports as well. Andre Lima's a good dude. He's got some decent skills. I do think he's a little overrated. And you guys came at me when I said I thought that Igor Severino was winning that last fight. You can see here that Andre Lima won that fight. That's because he was bit. Method DQ. Method was Igor Severino, Hannibal Lectered Andre Lima's arm, so the fight was called right then and there, as it should have been. But the reality is, I thought Andre Lima was getting pushed around a little bit. I thought he was getting not the better of the exchanges. Igor started to slow down. The tide was looking like it was going to turn. But in that first round, I thought Igor Severino won, and I'm not the only one who thought that. One of the judges did as well. So with your little neat comments about it. Either way, point being, Andre Lima's good. He's a good striker. His takedown defense is okay. He'll use it to keep fights on their feet. But we watched him get pushed around a little bit in his last fight. And he is fighting a short notice guy. Mitch Raposo took this fight on 10 days notice. He's a New England cartel guy, right? He's training with the Calvin Katars and the Rob Fonts of the world. That whole team basically fights the same. They have very clean, crisp boxing. They've got good submissions. but the wrestling isn't great. Mitch has a little bit better wrestling than some of the others, but he still can get taken down and he can get held down. That's what happened to him on the in the Ultimate Fighter House. This is his third crack at the UFC. He is 0-2, but if you look a little closer, it makes some sense. He was in the Ultimate Fighter House, got there very young, 22 years old, and he was beat by a wrestler up in weight. Then he makes his way onto the Contender Series on short notice, and he lost to Jake Hadley. Jake Hadley's very good. That's a credible loss. So the reality is Mitch Raposo, while he is technically 0-2 in the UFC, if we count Contender Series, which isn't the UFC, and if we count the Ultimate Fighter House, which isn't a professional fight, he is still better than that. He's better than that exposure. He's got good technical striking. He has some very real power, and he's putting people away on the regional scene. He's been training MMA since he was in middle school. And people want to say, oh, Mitch hasn't fought anybody nearly as good as Andre. This is a huge step up. And who the hell says this is a step up in competition? That's what I don't understand. How is this a step up in competition? Who has Andre beat? Who has Andre beat that we've established that this is a huge step up for Mitch? Both of them beat the shit out of regional guys. Okay. And now here they are fighting in the UFC. I do think Andre Lima wins this fight. The only reason I think Andre Lima wins this fight is because Mitch is taking this fight on short notice on a massive stage close to home. And I know it sounds a little far-fetched or I'm reaching here, but the reality is Mitch Raposo has the biggest opportunity of his life in an arena that's hours away from his house. Every human being that he's ever bumped into in the grocery store is calling him, texting him, tagging him on Facebook. And there's a lot going on right now. A huge stage, lots of eyes, a lot of pressure, short notice. I think that some of that could potentially get to him and affect his performance, not to mention the short notice. With that being said, Mitch is good. Mitch is technical. $7,600 is a very attractive price point, and Andre Lima missed weight by 4 pounds. There are two schools of thought there. He either missed by so much he didn't even attempt to make weight, and he's going to be fresh and looking good. Or he's just a tremendous failure, and this dude didn't prepare nearly as hard as he should have, and he's a mess. If you think he just didn't even attempt, like, I'll come in big, screw this guy, I don't care, and he's like fresh and healthy, then Andre's going to look pretty good. But if you think Andre just didn't train as hard as he should have and was cutting the weight and it just wasn't good and didn't go well, then Mitch is a good play here. I am not going to put Andre Lima in my DraftKings lineup at this price point. I think $8,600 is very inflated for a guy that won a fight because he got bit and we haven't seen much else from him. His opponent, Mitch Raposo, tough dude, good skills. If you want to shoot your shot on Mitch at $7,600, I think he's one of the better dogs in that $7-something price range. Then we have Ailin Perez taking on Joselyne Edwards. What makes this a little difficult is I don't know what Ailin Perez we're going to get. If we get this Ailin Perez, the one that beat Ashley Evans Smith, the one that had 10 takedowns, more than 12 minutes of control time, that Ailin Perez should be in every single lineup that has ever existed. But if we get the one against Lucy Pudilova, who did have 2 takedowns and did have some considerable control time, I don't know if she's worth it. She scored 88 points in her last fight. That would be barely a covering of salary. And that's what makes this breakdown tricky, because this Ailin Perez, the one that will shoot nonstop and let people stand up because she has terrible control, will score really, really well. You get 5 points for every single takedown. I do think Ailin Perez wins this fight, and I do think she wins it because of the takedowns, but I think this is a close fight. I think we got a 29-28 type situation here. She is taking on Joselyne Edwards. Joselyne Edwards does not get nearly as much credit as she deserves as a fighter. Joselyne Edwards is good, and she's sneaking out wins. This should be a win. The Nora Cornale loss, that should be a win. She scored 59 freaking points. 59 points in a loss. That should have been a win, and you should add 30 to that. And all of a sudden, she scored 89 points as a very, very, very slight favorite. I think she won that fight. Historically, Joselyne Edwards is a long, rangy striker who can keep that range, touch you up on the outside, come inside, work inside the pocket. Her takedown defense is known as being terrible, and she doesn't really shoot many takedowns. In this fight against Nora, not only did she have 2 takedowns, or they credited her for 5 takedowns of her own, she had plenty of control time. She defended some takedowns as well, and you can see those improvements. So Joselyne Edwards, who was already the better striker in this matchup, is improving the takedown defense, working some takedowns of her own. If Joselyne Edwards can keep this fight standing just a little bit, defend a few of those takedowns, Joselyne Edwards could potentially win this fight. Should Joselyne Edwards be in your lineup? No, I don't think she actually wins. I do think she gets taken down just enough to lose, so I'm not going to have her in my lineup, but I think I'm also going to fade Ailin Perez because I think this fight is closer than people think it'll be, and I don't think Ailin is just going to turn into a full-blown Nurmagomedov with the 9 takedowns and the 12 minutes of control time like she did against Ashley Evans-Smith. So I will be fading both sides of that fight. Then we have Bassil Hafez coming back, looking for his first official UFC win. And I say official because some people think he beat Jack Della Maddalena here. That was a split decision. He showed up on short notice and just kept moving forward. He had 3 takedowns. He kept bombing away. He kept moving forward. Ultimately, he was outstruck in that fight, and that is why he lost. But he's a heavy-handed guy. He is primarily a grappler, but he does have some power in his hands. And as I mentioned, he'll continue to move forward. Whether he slows down or not, he will move forward. He will stay in your face. If you go do some regional tape study, you'll see he has a beautiful check hook knockout. Not a striker, though. While that was beautiful, that knockout was impressive, he is not a striker. He is a grappler. He's a high-paced guy, both on the feet and on the ground. As I mentioned, cardio will fade, but even though the cardio will slow him down, he's not going to stop. You're not going to get hands on the knees exhausted. He's just going to keep moving, just at a slower pace. He's taking on Mickey Gall. Fun fact, I learned this from Jakey Boy. These two already went at it. They grappled in a NAGA. If you don't know what NAGA is, it's North American Grappling Association. It's basically just a grappling tournament that travels the country and from Connecticut. What an amazing state. I've competed in 50 freaking NAGAs over the years. And the talent is, it's hit or miss. It's basically who shows up that day. It's not, a giant governed sanctioned body of the best grapplers in the world, but every now and then they'll hit a city, they'll hit a region. You'll get some UFC fighters, you'll get some people to show up there that are pretty credible. All of that being said, Mickey Gall and Bassil Hafez competed in a NAGA, and Bassil won. Bassil won that. Jacob pulled up the pictures off the Instagram, shared them on our Tuesday live stream. And that is an interesting note because a lot of people were saying, oh, Mickey Gall could just take him down and Mickey Gall could out-grapple him. Well, they already grappled, and Bassil won that fight. Mickey Gall has been a staple, if you will. He's been around for quite a while. They brought him in 2016. And they basically brought him in to lose to CM Punk, essentially. He got his short notice, second fight ever was in the UFC. And then they said, here, come fight CM Punk. For the love of Christ, please lose to CM Punk. We spent $1 million on this guy. We want him to be a huge superstar over here. And then he beat CM Punk. And then he beat Sage Northcutt, who also was somebody that they were investing in. Good-looking kid, was young, doing well. And Mickey Gall sort of played spoiler. The problem with these things is that he essentially grew up in the UFC. And while on the surface that seems great, wow, he's only 19 years old or whatever it is, competing in the UFC, that's huge. It's not, though, because like others can follow the regional scene and gradually step up in competition and be tested and then improve and learn on the regional scene and do it. He didn't get those opportunities. He was immediately thrown into the fire, immediately fighting some very good people. Everybody he lost is good. Brown is a good fighter. Sanchez, that's Diego Sanchez, Ultimate Fighter winner, good fighter. Mike Perry, BKFC legend, good fighter. Alex Morono on this card, good fighter. Mike Malott, he did just lose, very good fighter. Mickey Gall has lost to some very good people. And that's what's hard to gauge here is he was always a good wrestler. Has very good jiu-jitsu. Hands aren't great. Cardio's not great. But he has been gone for 2 years. So what's been happening in those 2 years? Has he been competing? Well, the answer to that is no. But has he been working on himself? Has he been improving his hands, improving his cardio, adding tools to the belt? I don't think so. He did have an injury in the mix there. The UFC did not renew his contract, which is also part of the 2-year layoff here. But I think Mickey Gall is good. I do think being in the UFC that early has worked against him. He didn't get the opportunities that some other people did to learn on the regional scene and gradually work their way up. I don't see Mickey Gall winning this fight. I think Bassil Hafez wins this fight, and I can trust Bassil Hafez to move forward, shoot takedowns, bomb away on his feet. I think Bassil Hafez is actually probably worth that money at $9,200, but we're going to talk about some other spots later as well. Then we have Philip Rowe taking on Jake Matthews. Philip Rowe's a dog here, $7,900. And I'll tell you right now, I'm picking him to win. I think Philip Rowe wins this fight. I'm also going to tell you right now, I'm scared about it because Philip Rowe has some of the worst decision-making skills we have ever seen. He's coming off this loss to Neil Magny. He was beating Neil Magny. He was out striking him. He was beating him up at range, piecing him up against the cage. And then you see this one takedown. Then he turned into a wrestler for no reason whatsoever. Phil Rowe is grappling against the cage. Phil Rowe is shooting takedowns. None of it made sense. That is why he lost the fight. He gave this fight away, was clearly the better striker, going to win, and gave the fight away by making poor decisions in the moment. Overall, Phil Rowe's a good, solid striker who has power because of his range management and his speed. Excellent striker, excellent, well-rounded fighter. Terrible game planning, or at least terrible in the moment decision making. He is taking on Jake Matthews. Jake Matthews is a well-rounded guy. He can strike. He's got some power in his hands, good technical striking, pretty fast. He also can wrestle and grapple. He'll shoot some nice takedowns. He'll work you on the ground. What we haven't really seen from Jake, though, is both of those things. We've seen him be a good striker. We've seen him be a good grappler. We haven't seen him tie those things together and be a well-rounded mixed martial artist all at once in a single fight. I think if Jake Matthews shows up to this fight as a nonstop wrestler, I think he can win this fight. We've seen Philip Rowe get taken down time and time again. But if Jake Matthews shows up like he did against Michael Morales, and he had a little bit of success in that fight, but if he shows up like he did against Michael Morales looking to strike, if Phil Rowe doesn't make terrible decisions, he should outstrike Jake Matthews. Should be able to piece him up, manage the range, touch his face, and then Jake will get more desperate as the fight goes on, start headhunting, which is only going to slow down his punches, and Phil will look better and better. I do think Phil Rowe wins this fight. He is going to be an underdog pick for me here. I can't trust him with my money. You can't trust the guy that's shooting takedowns against freaking Neil Magny while winning a fight. You cannot trust that guy. I can't have him in my lineup. I can't spend that money. I do not think Jake Matthews wins, so I'm not going to spend favorite money on him in my DraftKings lineup. If you think Jake Matthews wins and you think he shows up nonstop wrestler, then you can explore it, but he doesn't score that incredibly well. He's not a guy that's going to get 30 takedowns in 10 minutes of control time. Yes, we've seen flashes of it, like against Meek in 2020, 8.5 minutes of control time off 4 takedowns, but I don't necessarily think that's who he's going to be. He hasn't been that guy in a long time. He only attempted one single takedown against Mike Morales. So I don't think that's who he's going to be. I'm not going to have Jake Matthews in my lineup, especially because I don't think he's going to win. Then we have a interesting matchup, a battle of the grapplers. We have Grant Dawson, and he is taking on Joseph Solecki. Grant Dawson, $9,300. While we did just watch Grant Dawson get knocked out cold, let's run through his stats in this fight. Grant Dawson landed an astonishing 0 significant strikes. But it's okay because he had 0 knockdowns. He had 0 takedowns. He didn't have any reversals. He had not 1 second of control time, landed 0 strikes whatsoever. Grant Dawson literally did nothing in that fight. They touched gloves and he just fell unconscious. Just immediately fell unconscious. Knocked out cold. A big bunk. That's how that fight went. And that's concerning, because you have a $9,300 fighter in DraftKings. He's a minus 550 favorite, and he is chinny as hell. That is concerning. But if his chin holds up, this guy can put some very real points on the board. He's a solid grappler who will stick to a game plan. He will tuck his chin and dive at legs. And when he gets you to the ground, he's got phenomenal control. He'll roll through all the exchanges. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He's a two-dimensional fighter. He's not one-dimensional. One-dimensional would be only wrestling or only butt-scooting jiu-jitsu. He's two-dimensional. He will shoot takedowns, and he has jiu-jitsu. Striking sucks, got knocked out, chin sucks, all those things. And where this is tricky is because I do think he wins, And if he wins, he will score well. This guy historically scores very well in these wins. 123 points against Gordon. There was a sub there. 103 points against Mark Madsen. There was a sub there. Only 90 points against Ismagulov, but he did have 3 takedowns and 12 and a half minutes of control time. Historically, he scores pretty well. Is he the highest scorer on every card? Not really. But he's a consistent guy that you know will work for your money. And for a cash game entry, he's probably worth a stab. But he is fighting Joe Solecki. Joe Solecki is also a high-level grappler. Joe Solecki will rely on his wrestling as well. He actually just took down Drakkar Klose in a beautiful takedown, had him in a beautiful armbar, and then got picked up and slammed on his head and got put out unconscious. Can't even blame him for that. He looked good. He looked very good. And getting picked up and slammed on your head, that wasn't a technical mistake by Joe Solecki. I guess he could have let go of the armbar, but I doubt he thought he was going for a ride. But Joe Solecki can shoot takedowns. He's got technical striking. He's the better striker of the two. Joe Solecki's striking is actually pretty good. I don't know why people are assuming his striking sucks. I think his striking is pretty good. We've seen him outstrike people. I think Joe Solecki is just going to be a step behind in the wrestling, though. Grant Dawson will shoot immediately. He will waste no time and immediately start wrestling. And that immediate grappling exchange is going to set the tone, set the pace. Joe's going to be defending the whole time off his back, trying to throw things up, trying to make stuff happen. I think there will be plenty of scrambles. I think Joe will be able to stand up more than most of Grant's other opponents, which will only lead to more takedowns and more scoring. I do think Grant Dawson wins this fight. I think the price tag here in DraftKings is appropriate, and you could probably spend that money and be okay with it. It is a lot of money. He doesn't always shoot past that. But again, he's a guy that you know is going to wrestle, which scores well in DraftKings. You know he's going to have good control time, which scores well in DraftKings. And as long as he doesn't get chinned, he should absolutely win this fight. Then we have an odd-placed fight. This was on the main card. Jailton Almeida was on the main card with Alexandr Romanov. The main card of a pay-per-view. And for some reason, they moved it. And they didn't swap it out for like a banger. They swapped it out for a rematch between two guys that have some spotty records. I don't know what this was about. I don't know if there was some political issue. I don't know if the UFC was like, hey, this fight's not going to go very long. It's only going to go a minute. And we have too many fights on the main card that are going to be short. We need to extend. I don't know why they did this. I don't know. Maybe they plan on announcing something during the main card, heavyweight related, maybe with John Jones. I don't know. I am curious what you guys think, why they would adjust this. It made sense to have Jailton and Alexandr Romanov on the main card. 2 top 10 heavyweights. Makes sense. To move them to, and it won't be a boring fight. It'll be very fast in either direction. So I don't know why they moved it. I'm curious what you guys think. We got Jailton Almeida. This guy's just a savage beast human being of a wrestler. And he doesn't even look like a human being. He hasn't looked like a human being outside of 20 seconds in his last fight. All of these other fights. First round. Oh, second round. Oh, that was a long fight. First round. The 5-round Derek Lewis decision win. People clowning him for that. I think it was pretty clear that he was purposely fighting 5 rounds. Purposely trying to prove a point that I could fight as long as I need to. He got 6 takedowns in that fight. 21 minutes of control time and scored 135 points. How you can dog this guy for just tooling around the knockout king is beyond me. How many people have tried to take Derek Lewis down and control him and failed? Curtis Blades certainly failed at that. And Jailton Almeida ragdolled Curtis Blades. Yes, he lost. He got knocked out. It was a lapse of judgment, was hanging on a leg, just literally froze, and was just getting hit in the side of the head till that was the end of it. But you know what happened up until that point? 9 freaking takedowns. In one round, he had 9 takedowns. It's astonishing what this dude was able to do. He put up 55 points in a fight that ended within the first minute of the second round, and he lost. Jailton Almeida will take anybody down whenever he wants to, and he has proven that to us time and time again. He is fighting Alexandr Romanov. Alexandr Romanov, just think Brock Lesnar with a dumb haircut. That's Alexandr Romanov. And actually, he did clean up his haircut for this fight. But if you go to his Instagram, I mean, he's looking like Corky from Life Goes On. He's looking like Franks and Beans from Something About Mary. It's the dumbest. He's got bangs and a headband. It's the dumbest haircut of it. And I don't think it's ironic. It's not some Brooklyn hipster with a dumbass mustache pretending that he's like, oh, hey, yeah, see? It's not that. He just literally has a terrible haircut. But outside of looking like Brock Lesnar with an extra chromosome, he's a very good wrestler. He moves forward, he shoots, and he runs through you like a freight train. That's what he does. His hands are not very good. They'll be better than Jailton's, but they're not very good. He doesn't strike with people very long. He does look to wrestle. He does look to close the distance. On his feet, he'll bomb. He'll stand there. He'll take a couple of shots here and there. And if he can get you to the ground, he'll look good. He will absolutely look good if he can get you to the ground. If we look at these two losses, the Tybura fight, he won that first round, got tired, and then Marcin Tybura stuck with it, poured it on, won that fight. Okay, but he had a good first round. Scored 51 points in a loss, which is somewhat impressive. The Volkov loss was pretty embarrassing. I don't know if you heard that, but I think my dog just choked. 0 significant strikes landed, 0 knockdown, 0 takedown, 0 reversal, had a minute and a half of control time, and that's because he was desperately trying to get a takedown that he couldn't get, and he was ultimately finished. He did score 1 full point in DraftKings. This fight, he quit. Couldn't get a takedown, turned his head, quit. I think, and I've been very high on Alexandr Romanov in the past, I think Jailton Almeida wins this fight. I think he dominates this fight. As a wrestler, how many times have we seen dominant wrestlers get wrestled and not know what to do? Alexandr Romanov does not strike me as a guy that knows what to do off of his back. I think Jailton Almeida is going to shoot the takedowns, get him to the ground, and Romanov's just going to be completely out of sorts. And Jailton Almeida is just going to do whatever he wants to do. If Romanov stands back up, he's just going to shoot again. I don't think anybody can deny that Jailton Almeida can get Romanov to the ground. He's gotten every single person to the ground, including Curtis Blaydes 9 times. I think the question then becomes, can Alexandr Romanov stand back up and make him pay for it? I personally don't think so. I think Jailton Almeida wins this fight. Jailton Almeida will be in my lineup because he's the most consistent high scorer on this card. So he's got to be in my lineup. If you think Jailton Almeida is a fraud, and I know there's probably 40% of you watching this think that, then you need to have Romanov in your lineup. The dude is $7,100. You need to have him in your lineup. If you think Jailton Almeida is a fraud, then this is the most no-brainer that you could possibly have on this card. I don't think he's a fraud. I will be riding Jailton Almeida to the top. Then we have the featured prelim. We got Roman Kopylov taking on Cesar Almeida. These are two high-level strikers. Both of these gentlemen had professional kickboxing backgrounds before moving to MMA. Roman Kopylov moved to MMA long before Cesar Almeida did. He's in here for a little while. He's learning the game. Look at this. A takedown against Punahil Soriano. Punahil Soriano was a Division III All-American wrestler. Look at this. A takedown against Duraev. I'm emphasizing takedown. I'm doing dramatic pauses because this is an MMA fight. This is not a kickboxing match. This is an MMA fight, and Roman has showed us he is at least capable of using MMA techniques. Anybody who cannot take Roman down has been knocked out. He's knocked them all out. Di Chirico, done. Punahil Soriano, done. Claudio Ribeiro, done. Just Freem, done. He's knocking them all out. Anthony Hernandez was able to get the takedowns, so he didn't knock him out. Roman Kopylov is a good high-level striker that has some very real power, very real finishing abilities, and flashes, not a ton of it, but flashes of mixed martial arts skills. Taking on Cesar Almeida, as I mentioned, high-level kickboxer. I think he's the more accomplished of the two as far as kickboxing credentials are concerned. The comments are flooded with, he beat Alex Pereira. Okay, that was like 16 years ago, and he lost to him twice. What are we doing? What are we doing? A win from that long ago with 2 losses to the same person is the most outstanding thing this guy has done? Let's relax. I do think Cesar Almeida is a very good fighter. And if this is just kickboxing versus kickboxing with MMA gloves, this could absolutely be a Cesar Almeida win. It could 100% be a Cesar Almeida win. I'm not trying to pretend that Cesar can't win this fight. I think this is a very close fight. This should be a 50-50 pick'em, and the salaries in DraftKings Fantasy are reflecting accordingly. I think Roman Kopylov wins this fight, while Cesar's a very good technical kickboxer, and Cesar's got good takedown defense against the cage. In the middle of the cage, he has no takedown defense whatsoever. Roman Kopylov is a very good striker in his own right. We haven't necessarily seen him be full-blown chinny. I don't know why there's so much insane love for Cesar. It certainly feels like 75% of the people think that Cesar will win, even though the odds are essentially razor thin. I'm going to go on the Roman Kopylov side. You probably have to have one of these guys in your lineup. They're priced affordably for what will probably end by finish. Just be careful which side you're picking. I am on the Roman Kopylov side. Frankly, it's an MMA fight, and he's the better MMA fighter. If we take a look at the UFC main card opener, we got Randy Brown taking Elizeu Zaleski. I don't think you can have Randy Brown in your lineup at $8,500. Let's run through his history. Certainly scored that many points against the 49-year-old Muslim Salikov. Okay, fine. Didn't score that many points, not even close, in a win against Wellington Turman. We're not even going to look at the losses. We're just going to look at the wins. Didn't cover his salary against Francisco Trinaldo in a win. Didn't cover his salary against Williams in a win. Didn't cover his salary against Gooden in a win. He has only covered his salary one single time in his UFC tenure, and that was against Oliveira in 2021. I don't know what his pricing was in these fights, but okay, you finished Brian Barberena. Congratulations. The reality is Randy Brown's a very good fighter. He's long, he's lean, he uses his length and range really well. He's, stupid tall for this weight class. He's 6'3" at this weight class, which makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. He also has some takedowns. He has 9 takedowns in the UFC, and he doesn't use them often, but when he does use them, he'll use those trips to get you to the ground, and he's got some solid jiu-jitsu. Randy Brown's a very good fighter. He's a very good fighter. But even if you think he wins this fight, in all likelihood, history tells us he will not cover his salary, as he basically never does. He's taking on Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos. He's a little older, 37 years old. He honestly looks much older than that, and he's got some years on him as far as fight years are concerned. You know, dog years? Oh, that's 7-1, right? Your dog's 3. He's actually 21 years old, and when you do the calculation, Elizeu Zaleski's like dog years, but like 2-1. 37, he's like 60-something. And I know 37 times 2 is not 60-something. But Elizeu Zaleski's been through it. But he is still insanely tough and insanely durable. He's the Capoeira, nickname is like Capoeira, and then something, I forget what's after it. It's not just Capoeira. Capoeira is that Brazilian dance fighting. And you can see the flashes of the wild athleticism in what he does and how he fights. He's a solid striker. He's got real power, insanely athletic. He'll spin. He'll do all the craziness that you would expect from Michal Pereira, essentially. But Elizeu Zaleski's a little older. And yes, he does have some real power. He is getting a little chinny. He was dropped by Renat Fakhretdinov instantly in their fight. Instantly, this dude was dropped. And he was able to survive, and he was able to turn that fight into a draw. He lost the first 2 rounds and then just stayed tough, hung in there, made that 3rd round a 10-8 by almost finishing Renat. And credit to him, that was wildly impressive. And for that reason, I think he's a good underdog. He scored 41 points in a fight where he clearly lost 2 rounds. I think Elizeu Zaleski can win this fight. If you want to shoot your shot, go for it. I think Randy Brown wins. I think Randy Brown's too good to lose here, but Randy Brown doesn't score very well, and it's certainly going to be a tougher fight than a lot of people think. So I am not going to have either one of these guys in my lineup. Then we have the new main card fight. They moved Alex Morono and Niko Price to the main card in lieu of the heavyweight contender fight. I don't get it. It is what it is. This should be a really fun, exciting fight. Maybe that's why. They should have thrown this. I mean, you use the prelims to sell the pay-per-view, right? If all the prelims are boring as shit, selling the pay-per-view is just that much harder. This should be a fun, exciting fight. This made sense for the prelims. But whatever. It's on the main card, and my boy Jailton is not. Alex Morono is a very good fighter. Alex Morono is a high-level BJJ black belt. He's entirely underrated in the grappling, and he has said publicly many, many times, I'm this good of a BJJ black belt, so I don't have to grapple. People aren't going to take me down because they know what will happen if they get me there. I want to strike. And you can hear the frustration in his coach's voices when he's striking because he's bouncing around on his tippy toes. He has that awkward style, and he's just doing weird strikes, having fun out there. He does have some power because of the movements. And as I mentioned, high-level BJJ guy. If you knew for a fact that this guy would wrestle and use that BJJ, he's somebody that you can trust, you can rely on. He's not the most trustworthy guy. This fight against Court McGee, that should have been a blowout. Court McGee's 106. This should have been a blowout, and it was a close split decision. Okay, he lost the decision to Buckley at 170. That was a quality loss. Buckley's looking better, but entirely unlikable on Twitter, but better and better in the octagon. Beat Tim's Means. Even then, didn't look great. Didn't cover his salary. Got knocked out by Ponzinibbio. Beat Matt Semmelsberger. That was a great win. I love that win. This win here, when he beat Matt Semmelsberger, is when it was like, ooh, how good is Alex Morono? And then turns out unreliable. Cannot spend $8,900 on Alex Morono. That's a bit crazy. I get why he's $8,900, but another guy that does not cover his salary. You got to go back to 2021 against the 450-year-old Donald Cerrone to find a fight where he actually covered his salary. The dude submitted Tim Means in the second round and still didn't cover his salary. If we move over to his opponent, he's taking on Niko Price. The reason Alex Morono is $8,900 is because Niko Price gets finished. That's just literally the reason why. He got finished by Phil Rowe in a fight that he was doing pretty well in. He got knocked out by Robbie Lawler last year in Robbie Lawler's retirement fight in I was there in person, and it was remarkable. I will never forget the energy in there. I honestly thank Niko for getting knocked out the way he did, because that just made it one of my most memorable UFC moments ever. It was spectacular. Niko Price is a good fighter. He's not great anywhere, but he's got some power. He's awkward as hell. He has 2 different knockouts from his back. Kevin Holland has 1. Niko's got 2. Niko Price is a good fighter. He's got decent grappling, decent striking, above average, good to very good power. But he's also used up. That whole narrative I did with Elizeu Zaleski, Niko Price has been through it, and it's starting to catch up to him. The Robbie Lawler knockout was barely anything. Barely anything. I think Niko Price's chin is unfortunately long gone. You can't trust him at $7,300, and you cannot trust Alex Morono at $89. This is a rematch. Where is it? Where is it? Here we go. From 2017, this is a rematch. The reason it says no decision is because Niko Price failed for some weed, which is not a performance enhancer. He failed for some weed, so they overturned it. The reality, though, is he finished Alex Morono. He got dropped twice and then came back and knocked Alex Morono out against the cage. That was in 2017. Since then, he was submitted. He was knocked out. 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 He's used up. He's not going to win this fight. Alex Morono wins. Cannot spend that money on a guy that's never covered his salary, though. Kevin Holland versus Michal Oleksiejczuk. Hooser. Let's just call him Hooser. The hell's a Hooser? Michal Oleksiejczuk, and I know Oleksiejczuk is Joanna's last name, but it just is what it is, guys. What do you want me to do? Look at how many consonants are in this name. Look at the letters smashed together. How am I... I understand. I have it written phonetically in front of me. Oleksiejczuk. But that just is so awkward to say. Michal, bat out of hell. Charges forward, swings wild, has power, has speed, is all striker, almost nothing else, and he goes for it. And then he quickly fades, and he either gets finished or he finished you already. That's it. That's how this guy fights. Michel Pereira moved up to 185 pounds, just ragdolled, beat the shit out of him. Chidi Njokuani had Michal 99% knocked out unconscious, 99% beat, and Michal just made it happen. It was crazy that he was able to come back from that. Good for him. Kyle Barallo subbed him. He beat Cody Brundage, beat Sam Alvey. Like, he's beating people. He's knocking people out. He has power, and he comes out hot. The pressure is insane. But I don't think it's going to work with Kevin Holland, and especially because you just have to weather that early storm. If you can get him out of that first round, if you can weather that early storm, you can absolutely beat him. He's taken on Kevin Holland. And while Kevin Holland has had some ups and downs in the last couple of years, right? He broke his hand against Wonderboy Thompson here in the 4th round, TKO loss. I mean, his hand was broken. So then he had to shoot some takedowns. It is what it is. Because outside of this, he's a very durable fighter. Smoked Ponzinibbio. Beat Chiesa. Lost a razor-thin fight to Jack Della Maddalena. Razor thin. A lot of people thought Jack Della was going to blow through him. That was a close fight. Some people could have given that to Kevin Holland. And then he did lose a one-sided fight to Michael Venom Page. And you know what? Venom Page showed up and proved that he is the real deal. Like, Michael Venom Page looked fantastic. What we also saw in that fight, though, was that Kevin Holland can take a shot. Michael Venom Page had that spinning back elbow that landed insanely flush on Kevin Holland's chin. Kevin didn't give a shit. It didn't matter. He kept fighting, kept moving forward, and that chin, that durability, that ability to move forward even after getting blasted is exactly what's going to beat Michal. Kevin Holland's $9,000. Kevin Holland should be in your lineup because if we know anything, when Michal loses, he gets finished, and Kevin Holland can certainly finish. Kevin Holland is a guy that does cover his salary, and I think he finishes Michal potentially early as Michal's rushing in like a lunatic. I like Kevin Holland at $9,000 in my lineup. Co-main event of the evening, we have Sean Strickland in a 5-round fight taking on Paulo Costa. Sean Strickland's another interesting guy because whether he covers his salary or not entirely comes down to how many minutes he has to fight because he is a high-volume guy. He scores all of his points with significant strikes, 173 significant strikes in his last fight. 0 control time, 0 takedowns, still scored 71 points. If he won that fight, which was razor thin, and a lot of people do think he won, it would have been 101 points with 0 takedowns or control time. That is impressive. That is impressive. $8,800 for a guy that historically does cover his salary is something that you'll want to look at. Sean Strickland, as we all know, he's a Philly shell striker. He's going to keep this here, and he's going to bob and weave and do all that. That's what he's going to do. He's not going to rest. He's not going to do anything else. He's pretty durable for the most part. Yes, Alex Fajeda just absolutely flatlined this dude, but Alex Fajeda could flatline a horse. So there's no shame in that. Outside of that, when did he look human again? I think he won the Jared Cannonier fight. I think that was a bad decision. I think he won that fight. And I believe he stepped up on short notice as well. Then he put together this night 3-fight win streak, one of which included a knockdown and a decision win over Israel Adesanya to win the belt. And then the Dricus du Plessis fight, he got taken down 6 times. That's why the judges didn't score it for him. A lot of people think that was outrageous and blah, blah, blah. And all hell broke loose with that decision, but he got taken down 6 times. He wasn't outstruck. And he's taking on Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa needs to outstrike Sean Strickland to win because while Paulo is a good grappler, he doesn't use it that much. He took down Luke Rockhold twice 2 years ago in the sloppiest fight at elevation we've ever seen. He took down Marvin Vettori 1 time. Show me the fight where he has 5 takedowns. Show me the fight where he actually used his jiu-jitsu. He's got good jiu-jitsu. He doesn't. He stays a striker, and he's got 11 knockouts. So he is a good striker, a dangerous striker, but he stays a striker. He almost knocked out Robert Whittaker. He wasn't credited with a knockdown because the fence held Robert Whittaker up. At the end of that first round, he had a spinning heel kick that cracked Robert Whittaker in the head. Ice skates. He charged, threw a couple more strikes. Round was over. Then he gassed, lost the next 2 rounds. Could have won that 5th round. The second he clearly lost. The 5th was razor thin. Could have won that round and didn't. Paulo Costa is a guy that I'll be rooting for. I love watching him fight. I don't want him to lose another fight. I don't want him to lose 4 of his last 5. And then it's, I want him to win. I want him to do well. He's entertaining online. He's always in an entertaining fight in the cage. I don't think he is going to win. Sean Strickland historically scores very well. There's rumors about staph in Paulo Costa's foot. I mean, there's a literal hole in this dude's foot you could fit a marble in. That's not Matt Pern. It's likely staph. I think Paulo Costa loses this fight, and I think Sean Strickland is probably worth your lineup because you run through the stats. He covers his salary. He has 5 rounds to work. Paulo Costa's pretty durable. He's a gamer. I think Sean Strickland gets it done and is worth his money. Then we have the main event of the evening. No-brainer, Islam in your lineup. It's that simple. I think every single person on this planet, maybe even people in Islam's camp, want Dustin Poirier to win because he's a good guy. He's entertaining. He's been at the top of the food chain for a while. Goes out there, fights his little heart out, but knows that he won't. I mean, I think that's just how this is, right? Like, am I crazy? We're all rooting for Dustin Poirier. I will be rooting for Dustin. Regardless of the money I have on I have money on Islam. I will be rooting for Dustin. but I don't see him winning this fight. Islam Makhachev could go down as the greatest lightweight of all time. We don't know yet. It's still early, but he's got all the makings for it. Improved striking, knocked out Volkanovski on the feet. We always knew his wrestling was nasty. We know his jiu-jitsu's nasty. He took down and submitted the all-time submission king in Charles Oliveira. Islam Makhachev, while he did get dropped by Volkanovski, which isn't a great look because Volkanovski's not exactly Mr. Power and he's a weight class below him, he still didn't panic, came forward, shot the takedowns, fought, and won. This was a dogfight. This was a dogfight of a fight, and it showed us that Islam can be in a dirty fight, that even if things aren't perfect and things aren't easy, he will continue to fight and continue to move forward. He fought the greatest of all time twice in a row, finished him the second time. You're seeing the improvements. I think Islam Makhachev gets whatever takedowns he wants and gets it done. He is fighting Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is a guy you can never count out of a fight, ever. This Benoit Saint Denis fight, he was getting his ass kicked. He got tooled around in that first round. Literally tooled around in that first round. Was tossed all over the place, pushed around, getting tooled. Very clear it's easy to take down Dustin Poirier. But then Benoit Saint Denis had a staph infection. And he was on antibiotics, which historically and notably kills your cardio. And his cardio went down the tubes. And Dustin Poirier blasted him with a right hook to the face, knocked him out. It did two things. One, it reminded us that there are levels to this sport. And two, it reminded us how tough Dustin Poirier is. Because after Justin Gaethje knocked him out real bad, a lot of us, me included, were like, he's probably done, honestly. He's probably done. Your chin doesn't recover from a knockout like that. It just doesn't. And it did recover. It did recover. I don't think the chin is going to be an issue in this fight. I don't think the striking is going to be an issue in the fight. Dustin has some of the cleanest hands in this division. And Dustin is a dog. I just think Islam takes him down, submits him. I think it's literally that simple. And if you agree, then you should have Islam in your lineup. If you disagree, or if you think this is going to be a war, which it might be, if this even resembles the Volkanovski-Islam fight, then Dustin at $6,700 is a phenomenal underdog play. 5 rounds to work with, constant movement, always looking to do something. If this is a 5-round dog fight that goes long, Dustin's going to be worth that $6,700. If you think Islam absolutely steamrolls him, Islam's going to be worth his price tag. Guys, that is the breakdown. Do me a favor. Join these people, the premium members that put up $500,000 of winning tickets. And they did so using our ownership projections, our tools, our insight. Join them. Go to WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member at the top. It's freaking $10 an entire month, and UFC 303 is in this month. If you sign up today, not only will you get UFC 302, you'll get UFC 303 and every event in between. WeWantPicks.com, click Become a Member. It's $10 an entire month.